I'm Jenny Griggs from the Senior Center again, and we're here with Annette Rhodes for another series. We're very fortunate to have her today. The series today is on healthcare powers of attorney. And prior to us starting this conversation with you, I brought up some interesting points, and I think that Annette will cover some of them in her discussion today, because I can't tell you, even from a personal experience, how relevant this topic is, especially with COVID today. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Annette. We're very blessed to have you again. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so take her away.
All right. So we're going to talk about healthcare powers of attorney, and we're going to talk about advanced directives. And the first point that I want to make is if you are 18 or older, you really should have this document. And I know you pointed out in light of COVID, absolutely, because disease, accident, those kinds of things happen. They often happen suddenly, and you're without someone to make decisions. So what does a healthcare power of attorney do? That's a document in which you name a healthcare agent. Your agent makes healthcare decisions for you in the event that you cannot make those decisions. Like you cannot communicate with your doctor what you want to have. So it's really important to have those because those kind of situations do come up. That document also describes and limits or expands, but limits their authority. What can they do? What can't they do within the bounds of the law? And that can really vary widely, and we're going to talk about that in terms of what might be good for somebody. It can also include the authority for end-of-life decisions, or I call them life-sustaining or life-prolonging measures that are keeping you alive. If they took those measures away, you would die without them. So ventilator in COVID is one of those things.
Right, right.
Okay, so the point that I first want to make is that 18 or older, you do need it. I want to tell you about a young man who had really just turned 18. This was on WRL about 4 or 5 years ago. He went snowboarding. He was in a terrible accident, had a brain injury. He's in a coma. His mother rushes to his side in the hospital, and she can't make any medical decisions for him because he's an adult. He did not have a power of attorney, and she could not even find out what his condition was because she didn't have a HIPAA release.
Wow.
So what she had to do, and this is not what you want to have to do at a point, what she had to do is go to court and get guardianship over her son so that she could then make some healthcare decisions for him.
Wow. Well, now, what happens, when I mention to everybody, healthcare power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, you got to have it.
Yeah.
They always say, well, I've got a power of attorney. You know what? Tell them why that isn't just good enough.
Okay, so a power of attorney, when we normally talk about those, a power of attorney is generally a financial transactional power of attorney. And that means that they have the right to sell things of yours, use that money for your benefit, basically take care of you financially, but it doesn't generally include in that document, you have to read the document, the power to make medical decisions or healthcare decisions for you.
Is it true that you should maybe not just have one healthcare power of attorney, you should maybe have two people, especially if your loved ones live out of town?
It's absolutely true. I think it's very important to have an agent, and we always try, if we can, to have two successors, because if they can't be reached, you're not going to get maybe the care that you want,
right,
or maybe you'll have care that you did not want, and that makes a difference. I think you have to think that through in terms of where you are at your stage of life, what's your health condition now, and what do you want. So those healthcare powers really should change. I think it changes, when you're young, you may want something different. When you're older, it's different. And
right,
it's not necessarily if you're disabled or not. I think, when you're young and strong and healthy, you think, I've heard people say this, I don't want to be in a wheelchair. Well, you can have a great life in a wheelchair, right? You really can. So to say, never put me in a wheelchair, I want to go, I think that's a little, I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you call that? That's a little too
premature, because
premature.
that answer doesn't last forever, like you said.
That's right.
Because you might feel that way, when you're 25, but when you're 70, you're grateful to be in a wheelchair and be able to live and just to still do some of the same things.
And you might be grateful at 32
Yeah,
as
you
well.
might be.
I have a story to tell of a woman who was young, active, very fit. She had a brainstem stroke. It knocked her out completely. The doctors couldn't find any activity. She was totally unresponsive. The doctors were telling her husband that there was no hope and that he should, just let her go by not giving her any nutrition, hydration, that kind of thing. Well, unknown to the doctors, unknown to her husband, she was fully aware of what was going on. She could hear, she couldn't move anything voluntarily, nothing. And she said, before that had happened, I would have said, I don't want to be a vegetable, right? I don't want to be lying there unable to move. I would have ended my life. But being in that situation and being completely disabled, she said in very strong terms, I wanted to live. So eventually what happened, I'll try to make it short, her husband was talking to her and noticed that she was blinking her eyes because she slowly, as the brain started to come back, she was able to blink her eyes and communicate with him. And he realized that she could hear him and respond to him. And then it got better. And she does have disability, walks with a limp, and has a little trouble with one of her arms. But she is one of the prime reasons, I think, don't be too quick to say, oh, I don't ever want to be in that situation, because you really don't really know until you're in that situation or coming into that situation, I think, before you make a decision.
That story gave me a chill. Yeah,
absolutely. And she's a remarkable person.
Wow, that's great. When someone goes, let's say when someone goes to the hospital, it doesn't matter at any age. I mean, let's say, okay, 18 or over. Should they have their healthcare power of attorney with them? I mean, let's talk a little bit about this process, because I've, experienced some of this.
You can fold that up and keep it in your purse or your wallet, but it's a fairly big document. When we get to the end of session 2, actually, if you've got the handout now, at the bottom of the handout, there's a link to the North Carolina Secretary of State Advance Directive Registry. And that is an awesome thing. For $10, you can file your healthcare power of attorney and an advance directive. We'll talk about what that is in a minute. Or an advance directive with them. They keep it online and give you a card that you then stick in your wallet. And if you're in an accident, sudden emergency, or you're just simply went to the hospital, usually take that with you or have it with you at the time of the accident. EMS medical personnel is trained to look to see who you are, find your driver's license, find that card, and then they can go online with that registry and find who your agents are and their contact numbers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So sorry I was premature in that question. But anyway, I'll be quiet. I'll let you go forth and talk about what you want to talk about. I just had so many questions.
Yeah, that's great. No, I don't mind interruption at all. We always circle around.
Yeah, okay, good deal.
Yeah. So an advance directive is the healthcare power of attorney gives an agent the power to make decisions for you. But what if you want to make your own decisions about end-of-life care? That's, in North Carolina, it's called an advance directive. So you're making directives about certain care that you want or do not want in advance. So advance directive, you'll hear them called often living wills. So the idea of that is that you should be able to, and you are allowed legally, to make certain decisions with regard to your health and whether you want to reject medical treatment or not. And that's fine. If you want to do that, I would caution you, and all my clients normally choose to do something like that. I'd caution you not to be too premature about certain things, to give your agent some flexibility, maybe allow them to override that advance directive rather than saying, pull the plug, no life-sustaining measures. Because some of the people who have thought about this with COVID is, well, if I'm going to recover, even if I'm on a ventilator, I want the ventilator, right? Where most people think about that is that that's just going to prolong my dying. And especially in terms of COVID, that ventilator is there to save your life.
Right.
And with the hope and expectation that you will recover and live the same life that you have now. So be a little careful about drafting those. I think it's important to think about advances in medicine that you might not know of now that might come around. Be, a little careful about those kinds of things. So there's lots of things that you can do in an advance directive, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in part 2.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what if you don't, let's see, okay, so you can give your agent the authority to override your advance directives. And so that's my part 1, and we're gonna do part 2 in just a minute.